Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. The human soldier woke up to find his unexpected reward, a beautiful alien slave. Lieutenant Tristan Hawk's head pounded as consciousness slowly returned to him. The familiar sterile ceiling of his quarters on Nexus Station swam into focus, bringing with it fragmented memories of the previous night's celebration. His hand instinctively reached for his temple, trying to massage away the throbbing pain. "Damn you, Gorvin," he muttered, recalling the alien traitor who had insisted on celebrating after Tristan had saved him from an ambush. Whatever exotic beverage the four-armed Quarian had kept refilling still burned through his system. As his vision cleared, Tristan realized he wasn't alone. A figure stood motionless in the corner of his room, perfectly still like a statue. Military instincts kicked in despite his hangover, and he bolted upright, immediately regretting the sudden movement as pain shot through his skull. "Who are you?" he demanded, squinting through the discomfort. The figure stepped forward hesitantly. It was a female humanoid, but definitely not human. Her skin was a soft violet hue marked with intricate silver patterns that flowed like constellations across her exposed arms and face. Long, iridescent hair fell in gentle waves down her back, shimmering between shades of lavender and midnight blue. She wore what could barely be called clothing, tattered fabric that revealed more than it concealed, emphasizing both her vulnerability and undeniable beauty. Most disturbing were the energy restraints circling her wrists, pulsing with a gentle amber glow. "Trader Gorvin sent me," she whispered, eyes fixed on the floor. "I am your reward." Tristan stared at her, temporarily forgetting his hangover. "My what?" "Your reward," she repeated, voice barely audible, "for saving his life." Slowly, Tristan rose from the bed, dressed only in standard-issue compression shorts. He stood a head taller than the alien woman, his muscular frame honed by years of military service. Running a hand through his dark hair, he tried to process the situation. "Look at me," he said, his voice gentler than before. Reluctantly, she raised her eyes. They were striking solid silver with no visible pupils, yet somehow expressive, conveying both fear and resignation. "What's your name?" he asked. She seemed surprised by the question. "I am called Selene." "Selene," he repeated, "and Gorvin gave you to me." She nodded once, the movement almost imperceptible. "You're not a thing to be given as someone's reward," Tristan said quietly, trying to catch her frightened gaze. "I don't own people." Confusion flickered across her delicate features, but Trader Gorvin said. "I don't care what Gorvin said," Tristan interrupted, anger rising in his chest, not at her but at the situation. "Where I come from, people aren't property." He stepped closer, noticing how she tensed as if expecting a blow. The reaction made his stomach turn. "I'm going to remove those restraints," he said, reaching for her bound wrists. Selene's eyes widened in alarm. "Please no, if you reject the gift, Trader Gorvin will be dishonored. He will. He will have me terminated." Tristan froze, his hand halfway to the energy restraints. "Terminated." "I am defective merchandise," she explained, her voice flat and emotionless. "I was to be disposed of before Trader Gorvin decided I would make an appropriate gift for you." "Jesus," Tristan muttered, running a hand over his face. The hangover was coming back with a vengeance, compounded by the moral dilemma before him. "This is insane." He paced the small room, acutely aware of Selene watching his every move. Nexus Station operated under its own laws or lack thereof. It was a trading hub where anything and anyone could be bought and sold. Humans were relative newcomers to the galactic community, and while the Earth Alliance had strict anti-slavery laws, they held little sway in places like this. "Okay," he finally said, turning back to her. "For now, you stay here, but you're not my slave, understand? You're a guest." Selene tilted her head slightly, clearly confused by the concept. "What would you have me do as your guest?" Tristan sighed. "Nothing, just sit down, relax, I need to think." He gestured to the small couch in the corner of his quarters. After a moment's hesitation, Selene moved to it and perched on the edge, her posture rigid and uncomfortable. Tristan pulled on a simple gray t-shirt and pants, then activated his comm unit. "I need to have a chat with our mutual friend Gorvin," he explained. "Stay here." As he reached the door, he paused, looking back at the alien woman sitting stiffly on his couch, energy restraints still glowing around her wrists. "I'll figure this out, Selene, I promise." For the first time, something other than fear flickered in her silver eyes, the faintest glimmer of hope. Finding Gorvin wasn't difficult. The Quarian trader practically lived in the central marketplace of Nexus Station, where he could keep all four of his arms on the pulse of trading activity. Tristan spotted him at his usual table in the Cosmic Lounge, surrounded by a group of traders hanging on his every word. The multi-armed alien was gesticulating wildly, his scaled skin shifting from orange to pleased purple as he regaled his audience with some tale of daring trade negotiations. "Gorvin," Tristan called out, cutting through the chatter, "we need to talk." The Quarian's head swiveled toward him, compound eyes blinking in recognition. "Ah, the hero of the hour," he exclaimed, his universal translator giving his voice a metallic timbre. "Come join us. I was just telling everyone how you single-handedly saved me from those Veclian pirates." Privately, Tristan insisted, his expression leaving no room for argument. Gorvin's scales rippled with annoyance, but he excused himself from his admirers and followed Tristan to a quiet corner of the lounge. "What troubles you, my human friend?" the Quarian asked, all four arms spread in a gesture of innocence. "Did you not like my gift? I thought she would be to your taste, exotic yet familiar enough in form." Tristan leaned in close, keeping his voice low. "People aren't gifts, Gorvin. Where I come from, we don't own other sentient beings." Gorvin's scales shifted to a contemplative blue. "Ah yes, your Earth Alliance has such quaint notions, but we're not in Alliance space, are we? On Nexus, the old ways still hold. I honored you with a valuable gift." "You can't just give me a person." "I can, and I did," Gorvin replied calmly. "The Astrian female was mine to give. She would have been terminated otherwise. Her previous owner found her too willful. I thought perhaps a human master might appreciate her spirit." Tristan fought to keep his temper in check. "I want you to take her back and free her." Gorvin's scales darkened to a deep indigo, a sign of displeasure. "Impossible. The transaction is complete. To return her would be a grave insult to both of us. Besides, where would she go? Astrians are not welcome in many systems since their homeworld's destruction. She has no clan, no status." "That's not my problem," Tristan insisted. "It is now," Gorvin countered. "You saved my life, Lieutenant Hawk. By the ancient codes, I owed you a life debt. The Astrian fulfills that obligation. If you reject her, the debt remains unpaid and my honor is stained." His voice dropped to a hiss. "And I cannot allow that." Tristan recognized the threat beneath the words. Gorvin was well connected on Nexus Station, and making an enemy of him would be dangerous, possibly fatal. "Fine," Tristan said through gritted teeth, "but I'm not treating her like property." "Do with her as you wish, that is the point of ownership," Gorvin said, his scales lightening slightly. "But know this, if you free her officially, she becomes clanless, stateless. Many would see that as a fate worse than servitude." The Quarian leaned closer, his alien face inches from Tristan's. "And should you choose to abandon her here on Nexus, I cannot guarantee her safety. There are those who would pay handsomely for an unclaimed Astrian female." With that parting threat, Gorvin returned to his admirers, leaving Tristan alone with an impossible choice. When Tristan returned to his quarters, Selene was exactly where he'd left her, perched on the edge of the couch. She hadn't moved an inch. "You can relax, you know," he said, closing the door behind him. She straightened even more if that was possible. "Did you speak with Trader Gorvin?" "Just Gorvin," Tristan corrected automatically. "And yes, I did." He sighed heavily, dropping into the chair opposite her. "It seems I'm stuck with you for now." A flicker of relief crossed her features, quickly replaced by the neutral expression she seemed to maintain as a default. "But let's get one thing straight," Tristan continued. "I don't believe in slavery. I don't own you. You're free to make your own choices." Selene's brow furrowed slightly. "I do not understand. If I am not your property, what am I?" "A person," Tristan said firmly. "Just a person who's staying with me for a while." She considered this, her silver eyes studying him intently. "And what will you require of me during this stay?" Tristan ran a hand through his hair, frustrated by her persistent assumption that she needed to serve him somehow. "Nothing, just be yourself." "Myself," she repeated, as if testing an unfamiliar word. "I'm not sure I know who that is anymore." The simple honesty of her statement hit Tristan like a physical blow. He leaned forward, meeting her gaze directly. "Then we'll figure it out together, but first things first." He reached for her bound wrists, noting how she flinched slightly but didn't pull away. "Let's get these off." The energy restraints had a simple release mechanism. With a soft click and a fading amber glow, they deactivated and fell away from her wrists, revealing pale bands where they had restricted her violet skin. Selene stared at her freed wrists in wonder, gently rubbing the marked areas. Better, Tristan asked. She nodded slowly, still seemingly bewildered by her new situation. Good, now are you hungry? I could use some breakfast and I'm guessing you could too. At the mention of food, Selene's eyes widened slightly. Yes, if it pleases you. It's not about pleasing me, Tristan said, standing up. It's about taking care of your needs. Come on, there's a decent food court on level 3. As they left his quarters, Tristan noticed how Selene stayed precisely 2 steps behind him, the posture of a servant following a master. He slowed his pace until they were walking side by side. We walk together, he said quietly, equals. Selene hesitated, then adjusted her position to walk alongside him. It was a small victory, but Tristan would take it. As they navigated the bustling corridors of Nexus Station, he couldn't help but notice the stares they attracted, some curious, some disapproving, some predatory. Nexus was a melting pot of species and cultures, but the sight of a human male with what was clearly an Astrian female companion drew attention. Tristan moved slightly closer to Selene, a protective instinct kicking in. Whatever mess Gorvin had dragged him into, one thing was becoming clear. Selene wasn't safe on her own here. And despite his principles, despite his anger at the situation, he couldn't bring himself to abandon her to whatever fate awaited unclaimed beings on this lawless station. For now, at least, they were stuck with each other. The food court on level 3 of Nexus Station was a cacophony of sounds, smells, and species. Vendors hawked everything from Torvalian flame-grilled meats to Hextani frost fruits, creating a sensory overload that momentarily distracted Tristan from his predicament. Selene stayed close to his side, her silver eyes wide as she took in the bustling marketplace. Her violet skin drew curious glances from passers-by, some appreciative, others calculating in ways that made Tristan's jaw clench. Have you been here before? He asked, guiding her toward a human-run stall that served something approximating Earth breakfast. Only once, she replied softly. My previous owner preferred to keep me confined to his quarters. Tristan winced at her casual reference to captivity. Well, that's not happening anymore, you go where you want. A flicker of confusion crossed her features, but where would I go? The innocent question hit Tristan harder than he expected. Freedom meant nothing without options, and on Nexus Station, Selene had precious few. For now, you stick with me, he said, approaching the food vendor. 2 breakfast specials, please. While they waited for their food, Tristan studied Selene more carefully. In the harsh lighting of the food court, the inadequacy of her clothing was even more apparent. The tattered fabric barely covered her, clearly designed to display rather than protect. We need to get you some proper clothes, he said, keeping his voice casual despite the anger simmering beneath. Something comfortable. Selene glanced down at herself, then back at him with genuine confusion. You find this garment displeasing. I find it degrading, Tristan replied honestly. You deserve better. A strange expression crossed her face, surprise mingled with something like wonder. Before she could respond, their food arrived, plates of scrambled synthetic eggs, protein strips that approximated bacon, and steaming cups of a coffee-like beverage. Tristan led them to a small table in a relatively quiet corner. As they sat, he noticed Selene's hesitation before the food. Is something wrong? Can you eat this stuff? Yes, I can consume it, she assured him. I am accustomed to waiting for permission. Tristan set down his fork. You don't need permission, not for eating, not for speaking, not for anything, understand? She nodded slowly, then carefully picked up her utensils and began to eat with delicate precision. After a few bites, her pace quickened, and Tristan realized she was probably starving. When was the last time you ate? He asked. Selene paused, considering. Yesterday morning, I believe, before Trader Gorvin decided to gift me. Tristan pushed his plate toward her. Here, take some of mine too. She looked alarmed. I couldn't possibly. I insist, he said firmly. I'm not that hungry anyway. It was a lie. He was ravenous after last night's drinking. But the gratitude in her eyes as she accepted the additional food was worth the sacrifice. As they ate, Tristan's mind raced through options. Nexus Station wasn't safe for either of them now. If he truly rejected the concept of owning Selene, he'd be making an enemy of Gorvin, and based on the trader's parting words, Selene would be in even greater danger. We need to leave Nexus, he said quietly, leaning forward. Seleni's eyes widened. Leave, but where would we go? Earth Alliance Space, Tristan replied without hesitation. My people have laws against slavery. You could apply for refugee status. Refugee, she repeated, testing the unfamiliar word. And you would take me there? I would, Tristan confirmed. My tour of duty ended 3 months ago. I was just passing through Nexus on my way home when I got tangled up with Gorvin. Selene set down her utensils, her silver eyes studying him with newfound intensity. Why would you do this for me? You owe me nothing. The question caught Tristan off guard. He'd been operating on instinct, on the moral certainty that helping her was the right thing to do. But there was more to it than that, a connection he felt to this strange, beautiful alien woman who maintained her dignity despite everything she'd endured. Because it's the right thing to do, he said simply, and because no one deserves to be treated as property. A small smile, the first he'd seen from her, curved Selene's lips. The sight of it sent an unexpected warmth through Tristan's chest. Thank you, she whispered. Their eyes met across the table, and something shifted in the air between them. For a moment, Tristan forgot about their precarious situation, about Gorvin's threats, about the stares of the other patrons. He was simply a man looking at a woman whose smile transformed her from beautiful to breathtaking. Selene was the first to look away, a deeper violet flush spreading across her cheeks. How would we leave? She asked, her voice slightly breathless. Surely traitor Gorvin would try to stop us. Tristan forced himself to focus on the practical aspects of their escape. We'll need to find a ship heading to Alliance Space, preferably one with a captain who doesn't ask too many questions. That will require credits, Selene observed. Passage is expensive. I've got savings, Tristan assured her. Military pay doesn't leave much opportunity for spending. As they finished their meal, Tristan noticed Selene's posture had changed subtly. She sat straighter, her movements more fluid and confident, as if the mere prospect of freedom had begun to transform her. Our first priority is getting you some proper clothes, Tristan said as they left the food court. Then we'll start making discreet inquiries about outbound ships. As they walked side by side through the station corridors, their hands brushed accidentally. Selene didn't pull away, and neither did Tristan. The brief contact sent a jolt of awareness through him that had nothing to do with their escape plans and everything to do with the woman beside him. For the first time since waking to find her in his quarters, Tristan allowed himself to acknowledge the attraction he felt. Under different circumstances, in a different place, he might have pursued it. But here now, with the power imbalance between them, it felt wrong to even think about. Yet when Selene glanced up at him, her silver eyes warm with something more than gratitude, Tristan wondered if perhaps she felt it too. This unexpected connection between a human soldier and an alien woman thrown together by fate in a misguided gift. Whatever lay between them would have to wait. First, they needed to escape Nexus Station and the shadow of Gorvin for good. The merchant district of Nexus Station was a labyrinth of small shops and stalls, each more colorful than the last. Tristan led Selene through the crowded passageways, acutely aware of the occasional glances they attracted. More concerning was the hulking Viridian he'd spotted twice now, always maintaining the same distance behind them. Don't look back, Tristan murmured, placing his hand lightly on the small of Selene's back to guide her into a clothing shop. But we're being followed. One of Gorvin's associates. Selene tensed beneath his touch but kept her gaze forward. What do we do? For now, we shop, Tristan replied with forced casualness, and we feed him false information. The clothing shop was run by a Meridian with 6 arms, each working independently to fold, measure, and display various garments. The shopkeeper's compound eyes assessed them as they entered. Ah, customers, the Meridian chittered, how may I assist you today? My companion needs a complete wardrobe, Tristan explained. Something practical, durable. And perhaps less revealing, Selene added quietly, surprising Tristan with her assertiveness. The shopkeeper's eyes flickered between them, clearly noting Selene's current attire and drawing conclusions. Of course, new ownership, new attire, I understand completely. Tristan opened his mouth to correct the assumption, but Selene squeezed his arm gently. Let him think what he wants, she whispered. It's safer that way. While the shopkeeper bustled about gathering garments, Selene ran her fingers over a bolt of deep blue fabric. On Astria, before its destruction, only the highest castes wore colors like this, she said softly. The rest of us wore neutrals to reflect our station. Tristan watched her face as she spoke of her homeworld. The markings on your skin, do they indicate your caste? Seleni's hand instinctively rose to trace the silver patterns on her violet arm. Yes, these mark me as Lumina, a servant caste, but one with special significance. She hesitated. We were trained to please our masters, but also to protect them. Protect them? Tristan asked, surprised. Before she could elaborate, the shopkeeper returned with an armful of garments. These should suit your needs. There's a changing area in the back. As Selene disappeared behind a curtain, Tristan positioned himself where he could keep an eye on both the shop entrance and the changing area. Sure enough, the Viridian paused outside, pretending to examine wares at a neighboring stall. First time owning an Astrian, the shopkeeper asked conversationally as he rang up preliminary charges. Tristan decided to play along, speaking loudly enough to be overheard. Yes, I'm taking her back to the Centauri system next week. I have business there. Centauri, interesting choice. The third planet has excellent resorts if you're so inclined. We'll be staying on the fourth, actually, mining operations. The lie flowed easily, and Tristan was confident their tale would report it back to Gorvin. Centauri was in the opposite direction from Earth Alliance space. The curtain rustled, and Selene emerged wearing fitted black pants and a high-necked blue tunic that complemented her violet skin while covering her completely. The transformation was remarkable. She looked less like property and more like a person. What do you think? She asked, a hint of uncertainty in her voice. Tristan found himself momentarily speechless. Without the demeaning rags, Selene's natural grace and beauty shone through. The modest clothing somehow made her more alluring, not less. You look, he searched for the right word, magnificent. A smile bloomed on her face, and that deeper violet flush returned to her cheeks. The shopkeeper, misinterpreting their exchange, chuckled knowingly. I'll wrap up the rest of these, he said, gathering additional garments Selene had selected. Would you like her to wear the new outfit out? Yes, Tristan replied, still unable to take his eyes off Selene. And we'll need a travel bag as well. As the shopkeeper packaged their purchases, the door chimed. Tristan tensed, expecting the Viridian, but instead a human man entered. He was shorter than Tristan but solidly built, with close-cropped blonde hair and the easy confidence of someone comfortable in their own skin. The newcomer nodded to Tristan in the universal gesture of acknowledgement between humans in non-human space, his eyes lingering briefly on Selene before he approached the counter. Just the usual Zix, he said to the shopkeeper. 2 pressure suits, standard human sizing. Cargo run, Captain Varric, the Meridian asked. Yep, heading out tomorrow, Earth Alliance supply drop. Tristan's attention sharpened at the mention of Earth Alliance. He casually moved closer to the counter. Earth Alliance, he echoed, that's a long haul from here. The man, Captain Varric, sized him up with a practiced eye. Military, he asked, clearly recognizing something in Tristan's bearing. Former Earth Alliance Marine Corps, Lieutenant Tristan Hawk. Jace Varric, independent freight, ex-Navy myself. They clasped forearms in the traditional military greeting. What brings Alliance military to this cesspit? Just passing through, Tristan replied carefully, though I'm looking to head back to Alliance space soon. Varric's eyes flicked to Selene, then back to Tristan. With company, I see. Yes, Tristan said simply, offering no explanation. A moment of understanding passed between the two men. Varric lowered his voice. Look, I don't pry into other people's business, but if you need passage to Alliance space, my cargo hold might have room for the right price, of course. When are you leaving? Tristan asked, trying to contain his excitement. 0600 tomorrow, docking bay 23. Varric collected his package of pressure suits. If you're interested, come by at 500, bring credits. 5000 gets you both there, no questions asked. After Varric left, Tristan and Selene exchanged hopeful glances. It seemed too perfect, exactly what they needed, appearing right when they needed it. Do you trust him? Selene asked as they paid for their purchases. Not entirely, Tristan admitted, but he's human, ex-military, there's a code there. As they exited the shop, Tristan deliberately led them toward the station's entertainment district, knowing their Viridian shadow would follow. He kept his arm around Selene's shoulders, partly for show and partly because he couldn't resist the closeness. We need to lose our tail before we head back to my quarters, he murmured. And we need to discuss what you said earlier about your caste being protectors. Selene leaned into him, her body warm against his side. The Lumina were trained in combat as well as other arts, she explained quietly. We were meant to be the last line of defense for our masters. Few outsiders know this. So you can fight? Tristan asked, surprised. Yes, though I've had little opportunity to practice since Astria's destruction. Tristan processed this new information. Selene was far more than she appeared, not just a slave, but a trained fighter from a warrior caste. The revelation made him see her in a new light, and his admiration deepened. As they navigated the crowded corridors, their bodies pressed close together, Tristan became increasingly aware of the attraction building between them. It wasn't just physical, though that element was undeniably strong, but something deeper. A connection forged in their shared predicament and strengthened by each new discovery about one another. When Selene's silver eyes met his, Tristan saw his own desire reflected there, tempered with uncertainty. Whatever was developing between them would have to wait. First, they needed to escape Nexus Station and the shadow of Gorvin for good. The journey back to Tristan's quarters was tense. They'd managed to lose their Viridian shadow in the crowded entertainment district, but the sense of being hunted lingered. As they rounded the final corner, a tall, spindly figure stepped into their path, another of Gorvin's associates, a Nexian with translucent skin that revealed the shadowy outlines of internal organs. Lieutenant Hawk, the Nexian said, its voice like dry leaves rustling. Traitor Gorvin requests your immediate presence. Tristan positioned himself slightly in front of Selene. I'm busy at the moment, tell him I'll stop by tomorrow. The Nexian's lipless mouth curved into what might have been a smile. He anticipated your reluctance. He asked me to inform you that he has received a most generous offer for your companion. A collector of rare species is particularly interested in a purebred Astrian Lumina. Selene stiffened beside him. Tristan felt a surge of protective anger. She's not for sale, he said flatly. Everything on Nexus is for sale, the Nexian countered. Traitor Gorvin merely wished to extend the courtesy of allowing you to match the offer before proceeding. The collector arrives tomorrow morning. Tristan's mind raced. Their window for escape had just narrowed dramatically. Tell Gorvin I'll consider it, he said, forcing a casual tone. Now, if you'll excuse us. The Nexian inclined its head and stepped aside, but its translucent eyes lingered on Selene with disturbing intensity. Once inside his quarters, Tristan immediately activated the privacy shields and began gathering essentials. We need to leave tonight, he said. Gorvin's planning to sell you to some collector tomorrow. Selene's face had gone pale beneath her violet skin. A collector, did the Nexian say who? Number does it matter? It might, she sank onto the edge of the bed. There are those who hunt my kind not just for our companionship but for other properties. Tristan paused in his packing. What properties? Selene hesitated, then slowly rolled up her sleeve. The silver markings on her arm began to glow faintly in the dimmed light of the quarters. The Lumina were not just servants and protectors, she explained. We were engineered to be living weapons. Our blood contains compounds that can be harvested for certain applications. Weapons, Tristan guessed. She nodded. Biological agents that target specific species. The last Astrian ascendancy used us in their wars. It's why our world was destroyed. The survivors, like me, are hunted for what we carry. Tristan stared at her glowing markings, processing this revelation. So she wasn't just valuable as a slave, she was a walking bioweapon. Potentially, she admitted when he voiced the thought, though I would never willingly allow my blood to be used that way. The pieces clicked into place. Why Gorvin had been so eager to gift her to Tristan, why he'd threatened her termination if rejected. The information broker had been holding a biological weapon he couldn't safely sell on the open market. We definitely need to leave tonight, Tristan said, returning to his preparations with renewed urgency. But I'm not sure we can trust Varric either. The timing of his appearance was too convenient. Selene stood, her posture changing subtly. Gone was the submissive slave, in her place stood a warrior, alert and ready. You wish to test him, she stated. Yes, and I need to see what you can do. Tristan cleared a space in the center of the room. Show me your combat skills. Without hesitation, Selene moved to the cleared area. She closed her eyes briefly, and when she opened them, they glowed with the same silver light as her markings. She began a series of fluid movements that reminded Tristan of ancient Earth martial arts, but with an alien precision that was both beautiful and lethal. As she moved, the air around her seemed to shimmer. She executed a spinning kick that came within a hair's breadth of Tristan's face, stopping with perfect control. Impressive, he breathed, genuinely awed. This is without a proper training regimen for many cycles, she said, not even slightly winded. At my peak, I could disable 3 armed guards without making a sound. Tristan reassessed their situation. With Seleni's skills, their chances of escape had just improved significantly. Here's the plan, he said, lowering his voice despite the privacy shields. We'll leave in 2 hours during station midnight when the corridors are least populated. We'll find somewhere to hide until our meeting with Varric. If he's legitimate, great, and if not, he left the implication hanging. Selene nodded, understanding, and if we encounter resistance, we deal with it together. As they finished packing the few essentials they would need, Tristan found himself watching Selene. The revelation of her true nature hadn't diminished his attraction to her. If anything, it had deepened it. She was extraordinary, a survivor who had maintained her integrity despite being treated as property. When she caught him looking, her silver eyes held his gaze without flinching, the air between them charged with unspoken tension. Tristan, she said softly, if this is our last night on Nexus, there's something I should tell you. He moved closer, drawn by the intensity in her voice. What is it? Among my people, the Lumina formed deep bonds with those they chose to protect. It's not just duty, it's a connection that transcends ordinary relationships. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I've begun to feel that bond with you. The admission hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Tristan knew he should maintain professional distance, focus on their escape, but the pull between them was undeniable. I feel it too, he admitted, whatever this is between us. Selene stepped closer, her violet skin glowing softly in the dim light. In Astrian tradition, warriors facing battle often seek comfort in each other's arms. It strengthens the bond, focuses the mind. Tristan's breath caught as she placed a hand on his chest, directly over his heart. Her touch burned through the fabric of his shirt. Is that what you want? He asked, his voice rough with restraint. What I want, she replied, her eyes never leaving his, is to choose for myself for once. And I choose you, Tristan Hawke. The last of his resistance crumbled. He drew her into his arms, and when their lips met, it felt like coming home to a place he'd never been before. Tristan woke with a start, his soldier's instincts alerting him before his conscious mind registered the danger. Beside him, Selene slept peacefully, her violet skin glowing faintly in the darkness, her silvery hair spread across the pillow. For a moment, he allowed himself to marvel at the unexpected turn his life had taken in less than a day. Then he heard it again, the faint beep of the door lock being overridden. He gently shook Selene awake, pressing a finger to his lips. Her eyes snapped open, instantly alert, the warm silver darkening as she registered his warning. Someone's coming, he whispered, already reaching for his sidearm. They dressed silently and quickly, the intimacy they'd shared adding a new layer of coordination to their movements. As Tristan reached for their packed bag, he noticed something odd. The clasp was slightly ajar, though he distinctly remembered securing it. Wait, he murmured, catching Selene's arm. Someone's been in here while we slept. Her eyes widened. How is that possible? The privacy shields can be bypassed by station security, or someone with the right connections. Tristan carefully examined the bag without touching it. They could have planted tracking devices. The door lock emitted another soft beep. Whoever was trying to override it was getting closer to succeeding. We need to leave now, Selene urged. Without the bag. Tristan nodded, the emergency exit through the maintenance shaft. Every quarters on Nexus Station had an emergency access panel, a concession to safety regulations that the station's designers had reluctantly included. Tristan had located theirs within hours of taking residence, a habit from his military days that was now proving invaluable. As the door lock gave a final beep, Tristan yanked open the hidden panel in the wall. Selene slipped through first, her lithe body easily fitting into the narrow passage. Tristan followed, pulling the panel closed behind them just as the main door slid open. Through the thin wall, they heard heavy footsteps enter the room. They're gone, a gruff voice announced, the Viridian who had been following them earlier. Check everywhere, another voice commanded. Trader Gorvin wants them found before the collector arrives. Tristan and Selene exchanged glances in the dim emergency lighting of the maintenance shaft. Their midnight escape had begun none too soon. They crawled through the narrow passage, the metal cold against their palms. The shaft branched in multiple directions, forming a hidden network throughout the station. "Which way?" Selene whispered. Tristan oriented himself mentally. "Left. It should lead toward the commercial docking bay. We need to find somewhere to hide until our meeting with Varric." As they navigated the cramped tunnels, Tristan couldn't help but notice how different Selene was from the frightened woman he'd first encountered. She moved with confidence and grace, her earlier submissiveness replaced by the bearing of a warrior. "You're starring," she noted, a small smile playing at her lips. "Just admiring the view," he replied with a grin that felt surprisingly natural given their precarious situation. Her skin flushed a deeper violet, an Austrian blush he now recognized. "Is this appropriate human behavior during an escape?" "Probably not," he admitted, "but I've never been great at following protocols." Their quiet laughter echoed softly in the metal tunnel, a moment of lightness in the midst of danger. The connection between them had deepened during their night together, transforming from attraction to something more profound. Tristan had never experienced anything like the bond Selene had described, a mental and physical connection that seemed to transcend ordinary relationships. "Earlier you mentioned the Lumina form bonds with those they protect," Tristan said as they paused at a junction. "What exactly does that mean?" Selene's expression grew thoughtful. "It's difficult to explain in human terms. The closest concept might be what you call imprinting, but it's more reciprocal. The Lumina and their chosen companion become attuned to each other, sensing emotions, anticipating needs. Like telepathy." "Not quite so direct, more like heightened awareness." She reached out, her fingers brushing his cheek. "I can feel your concern, your determination, and earlier when we were together, I felt your pleasure as if it were my own." Tristan caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "I felt it too. Is that normal for Austrians?" "Yes, for humans," she shook her head, wonderment in her eyes. "You are remarkable, Tristan. My people believed humans were too individualistic to form such bonds, yet here you are defying expectations." The admiration in her voice filled Tristan with a warmth that had nothing to do with their physical exertion. Humans were newcomers to the galactic community, often underestimated by older species. It was gratifying to know he'd challenged at least one preconception. Their moment of connection was interrupted by a distant clanging in the tunnels. Someone else was in the maintenance system. "They're searching the shafts," Tristan whispered. "We need to move faster." They increased their pace, taking turns seemingly at random to throw off any pursuit. Finally, they reached a junction with a ladder leading down. "This should put us near the commercial sector," Tristan said, peering down the dark shaft. "There's a storage area for shipping containers that should be empty this time of night." He descended first, then helped Selene down. The exit panel opened into a dimly lit corridor lined with massive cargo containers waiting to be loaded onto outbound ships. "Perfect," Tristan murmured. "We can hide in one of these until it's time to meet Varric." They selected a container marked for agricultural supplies, reasoning it would be less likely to contain dangerous materials or security systems. Tristan bypassed the simple lock, and they slipped inside, closing the door behind them. The container was half filled with crates of seed packets and farming equipment bound for some colony world. They found a space between the crates and settled in to wait. 4 hours until our meeting with Varric," Tristan said, checking his chronometer. "Try to get some rest." Selene nestled against him, her body fitting perfectly against his. "I've never felt so free," she whispered. "Even hiding in a cargo container hunted by Gorvin's men, I'm making my own choices for the first time." Tristan wrapped his arm around her, drawing her closer. "And what do you choose now?" In the dim light filtering through the container's ventilation slats, her silver eyes found his. "I choose us, Tristan. Whatever happens, I choose us." Their lips met in a kiss that held both promise and uncertainty. Tomorrow they would either find freedom or face capture, but tonight, in this stolen moment of peace, they had each other, unexpected companions on a journey neither had anticipated. The chronometer on Tristan's wrist beeped softly at 4:45, rousing them from their light sleep. Selene stirred against him, her warmth a comfort in the chilly cargo container. "Time to go," he whispered, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. They moved silently through the shadowy commercial sector, staying close to the walls and ducking into alcoves whenever station personnel passed by. Docking Bay 23 loomed ahead, its entrance illuminated by the harsh blue-white glow of industrial lighting. Captain Varick's ship, the Starward Venture, was a battered but well-maintained cargo hauler. Its loading ramp was already down, with Varick himself supervising the final preparations, his stocky frame easily recognizable even at a distance. "Ready?" Tristan asked, squeezing Seleni's hand. She nodded, her silver eyes resolute. Together they approached the ship openly, no longer attempting to hide. Varick spotted them and waved them over, his expression unreadable. "Right on time," he said, extending his hand to Tristan. "Got my credits." Tristan transferred the payment from his account chip, 5,000 credits as agreed. Varick verified the transfer, then gestured toward the ship. "Welcome aboard, we launch in 15 minutes. As they started up the ramp, a cold, familiar voice froze them in place. "I'm afraid your departure will have to be delayed." Gorvin stood at the entrance to the docking bay, flanked by his Voridian enforcer and two other armed guards. The Quarian's scales had darkened to a deep indigo, a color Tristan now recognized as anger. "The Astrian female is not yours to remove from Nexus Station," Gorvin continued, stepping forward. "She represents a significant investment, one that has already been promised to a very important client." Tristan moved protectively in front of Selene. "She's not property, Gorvin, she's a person making her own choice." The information broker's compound eyes narrowed. "Such charming human sentimentality, but ultimately irrelevant. The female comes with me, you may keep the life debt if you wish." "Not happening," Tristan growled, his hand moving toward his concealed sidearm. Varick stepped up beside them, his own weapon already drawn. "You're interfering with my scheduled departure, Gorvin. That's a violation of commercial code." Gorvin's scales rippled with amusement. "Captain Varick, always hiding behind regulations. Do you really wish to make an enemy of me for these strangers?" "I've never much cared for slavers," Varick replied evenly, "and I have already been paid." The standoff stretched taut as a wire, then with a subtle nod from Gorvin, his guards raised their weapons. What happened next occurred so quickly that Tristan could barely track it. Selene moved past him in a violet blur, her body glowing with the same silver light as her markings. She struck the Voridian first, her movements fluid and precise, targeting pressure points that dropped the massive alien to his knees. The other guards fired, but Selene was already elsewhere, spinning between them, disarming one with a twist of his wrist that made him howl in pain. Tristan and Varick joined the fray, providing covering fire that forced Gorvin to take shelter behind a cargo container. "Get to the ship," Varick shouted, laying down suppressive fire. Tristan grabbed Selene's arm, pulling her toward the ramp, but she resisted, her eyes fixed on Gorvin. "He'll never stop hunting us," she said, her voice eerily calm. "Not while he knows what I am." Before Tristan could respond, she broke free and darted toward Gorvin's position. The Quarian emerged, a small energy pistol in one of his four hands, only to find Selene directly before him, her palm striking upward under his jaw with devastating force. Gorvin staggered back, scales flickering between colors in shock. "How dare you touch your betters," he hissed. "You are not my better," Selene replied, her voice carrying a power Tristan had never heard before. "You are not my master, you are nothing to me." With movements too fast to follow, she disarmed him and forced him to his knees, her hand at his throat. "Selene," Tristan called, torn between admiration and concern. "We need to go." For a moment, he feared she would kill Gorvin, and part of him couldn't blame her. But instead, she leaned close to the Quarian's auditory receptor and whispered something that made his scales pale to an ashen gray. She released him and ran back to Tristan, taking his hand as they sprinted up the ramp into Varick's ship. The captain followed seconds later, slapping the control to raise the ramp and seal the airlock. "Strap in," he shouted, racing for the cockpit. "This might get bumpy." As the engines roared to life, Tristan secured Selene in one of the passenger seats, then took the one beside her. Through the viewport, they could see Gorvin still kneeling on the docking bay floor, his guards scrambling to regroup. "What did you say to him?" Tristan asked as the ship shuddered and began to move. A small, fierce smile played at Selene's lips. "I told him that if he ever came after us, I would ensure that every information broker in the galaxy learned his true name and the shame of his house. Information is currency, and I know things about Gorvin that would destroy him." The ship lurched as it cleared the docking clamps. Varick's voice came over the intercom. "Station security is trying to lock us down, hang on." They were thrown back in their seats as the starward venture accelerated away from Nexus Station. For several tense minutes, warning lights flashed and the hull vibrated with the strain of maximum thrust. Then suddenly, everything smoothed out as they entered the jump point that would take them to Earth Alliance space. Varric appeared in the doorway, wiping sweat from his brow. "We're clear, they didn't even get a shot off." "Thanks for sticking with us," Tristan said. "That wasn't part of the deal." Varric shrugged. "Let's just say I've got my own reasons for disliking Gorvin and his kind." He turned to head back to the cockpit, then paused. "We've got about 12 hours before we reach Alliance space. Make yourselves comfortable." As Varric disappeared, Tristan unstrapped and moved to Seleni's side, helping her out of her restraints. "You were amazing," he said, cupping her face in his hands. "Terrifying but amazing." She leaned into his touch, her eyes searching his. "Does it change how you see me, knowing what I'm capable of?" Tristan considered the question seriously. In less than a day, Selene had transformed from a seemingly helpless slave to a formidable warrior who had faced down one of the most dangerous figures on Nexus Station. Yes, it changed how he saw her, but not in the way she feared. "It makes me admire you even more," he said honestly. "Your strength, your courage, they're part of who you are, just like your gentleness and your dignity." Relief flooded her features. "I was afraid." "Don't be," he interrupted, drawing her into his arms. "I'm falling for all of you, Selene, not just parts of you." She smiled up at him, her silver eyes luminous with emotion. "And I for you, Tristan Hawke." As they held each other in the cargo hold of a ship bound for Earth Alliance space and freedom, Tristan reflected on the strange twist of fate that had brought them together. What had begun as an unexpected reward, a misguided gift rooted in concepts of ownership and obligation, had transformed into something far more precious, a connection between equals chosen freely and valued deeply. Whatever challenges awaited them in Alliance space, refugee applications, cultural adjustments, the lingering threat of those who would hunt Selene for what she carried in her blood, they would face them together. Not as master and slave, but as partners bound by choice and by the rare connection that had formed between a human soldier and an Astrian warrior. In the quiet hum of the ship's engines carrying them toward their new life, Tristan made a silent vow to protect this bond they had found. Not because Selene was his, but because they had chosen to belong to each other. "What are you thinking?" Selene asked, her fingers tracing the contours of his face with a tenderness that belied her earlier ferocity. "I'm thinking that some rewards come in unexpected forms," he replied, kissing her palm. "And that freedom is sweeter when it's shared." Her answering smile confirmed what he already knew, that in trying to free her, he had found his own liberation. Together, they turned to watch the stars streaking past the viewport, each brilliance marking another step toward the future they would build. Not one dictated by the constraints of ownership or obligation, but one crafted by choice, by respect, and by the profound connection that had blossomed between them against all odds. On the horizon of that vast starfield lay not just escape, but the promise of a new beginning, one where both human and Astrian could discover what it truly meant to be free.